Good evening. My name is Dennis Swanton. I am the Chair of the Fair Rent Commission, and I would like to welcome you to the Fair Rent Commission special meeting. Tonight's meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format in accordance with Governor Lamont's executive orders regarding the conduct of public meetings. Fair Rent members and town staff are present and participating in person. Members of the public are attending in person and also have the option to view the meeting on WHCI, Comcast 5, Frontier TV channel 6098, YouTube, and www.whctv.org. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Matthew, can you please call the roll call?
Yes, I think my microphone is on. Looks like it's on. Maybe it's not.
Red is on.
Red is on. We have to turn yours off. Sorry, I think put yours on.
Okay. All right, roll call for the West Hartford Fair Rent Commission meeting, June 3rd, 2021. Brian Fulco,
He's not here.
Joseph Cassidy,
Not here.
Matthew Lampkin, present. Stu Mahler,
Here.
Nastasia Ortiz,
Present.
Alexis Safo Agiman,
Present.
Thank you.
We have a quorum.
So it appears we have a quorum and may proceed. So I'd like to have approval of the minutes from the meeting of April 29th, 2021. Can I please get a motion to approve the minutes? Or if anybody has any questions about the minutes?
Were the minutes
The
online?
minutes are here in your envelope in here.
You want us to look it over first? 'Cause, Okay, the question was the bylaws, which we didn't really approve. We were going to sort of go and have Cynthia, review them for statutory correctness and any other issues we wanted to have. These were the old minutes of these were the old, not minutes, but they were the old bylaws from the previous commission. And so that was in the minutes, that's all. That was what we discussed.
Yeah, it should be in there. You can just scanning through here.
We did come up with an idea. We were going to talk about the bylaws at this meeting, but we put it off because we wanted to do a mock hearing because we really have a lot of new faces and people that have never done this, and that's why I was speaking with Joe Cassidy, Cynthia, and we decided to have a mock hearing just to get familiar with how it flows, so we can understand, how this is done, because, we want to make, if we are busy, we want to make sure that we know what we're doing. So we were going to put that off to the next meeting about the bylaws.
And that's, so where does it say that maybe we can fix that then when we adopt the minutes?
It's mentioned on the fourth and fifth.
The fourth,
and fifth bullet.
the
on
fourth
the
bullet,
second
1,
page.
2, 3, 4. Representatives, yes, have a subcommittee.
Where?
They did not have to. Okay, yeah, I remember, I was on that. I wanted to participate. The motion to yes, unanimously. Okay, so really, we don't have to change anything. We don't have to change anything because that's still pending.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. Thank you. So is there any other questions about the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
So we have Stuart Mahler proposed, and Natasha has seconded.
No comments? You have to say all those in favor.
All in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye,
Aye.
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 So the minutes are approved
unanimously.
unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. So the new business is a mock hearing that is in your folder.
And we're holding a hearing today, a mock hearing.
So we're going to be having a mock hearing today. Cynthia, are you going to be the plaintiff, the tenant, or how is this going to?
Is this on? Okay.
You gotta press the,
I think you can hear me, yes?
Yeah.
All right, great. For the record, Cynthia Latour, Assistant Corporation Counsel. What our office has presented to you is a complaint that was filed in 2009 that the previous Fair Rent Commission adjudicated. So what you'll find in here is the attorney's statement on behalf of the landlord statement, a letter that the tenant received from the property manager, and the tenant affidavit, as well as a floor plan. So all of these were presented as exhibits in the 2009 hearing. So my recommendation to start would just be to read the tenant affidavit, as that has all of the relevant information that was provided during that 2009 hearing. So Chair, if you could read that into the record, and then collectively as a group, if you could decide how you want to proceed once you have that information, and we can try to move forward.
Thank you. So to put into the record, the mock hearing is a tenant affidavit. It states, I have filed a fair rent complaint with the town clerk. My landlord proposed raising my rent on a studio apartment from $1,100 to $1,225. No improvements have been made during my time in the building, and my rent has been increased yearly. Even more, I am concerned since the landlord says my rent will go up an additional $100 to $1,325 if I do not sign a new lease by August 30th. What can be done about my notice if I do not sign the new lease? I am age 77. I have no close relatives. I am on a fixed income and I receive a small pension. As I do not have a car, it would be difficult for me to move since shopping is nearby here. As far as utilities, heat and water are included in my rent. Tenant is resident of West Hartford in the zip code of 06107.
Is the tenant representing herself, or does she have an attorney, or?
I'll just stand here. The tenant is representing her. The tenant represented herself in this situation, and the landlord was an LLC, and so they obviously had a property manager on site, but the landlord was represented by counsel at the time. The landlord was not present at the hearing, but the attorney was.
Do we need to swear in the parties?
Yes, that would be the next step.
Okay. So we would need to swear in the attorney and the landlord,
You would need to swear in the tenant,
the tenant.
and the landlord is counsel.
Okay.
Or the attorney is counsel to the landlord, so we would not swear in the attorney.
Right, okay.
So in this case, Nastasha would be the one swearing in the tenant in this situation, as she, I believe, is our only attorney.
You're in it.
Yes. So
Do you have,
Is there a standard swearing in affidavit? Do we
there
follow the?
is that I would have available for you.
Okay,
When
excellent.
we have such a hearing.
Thank you.
So that would be the next step. Subsequently, the tenant would then give her statement, which the chair has already read into the record. And now is an opportunity for questions to be asked, I believe, by the commission, all through the chair.
So does anybody have any questions?
how long has the tenant been residing in the property?
16 years.
16.
You've been in this apartment for 10 years?
16, 1-6.
Is this like a first floor or a second, can you describe the apartment where it, is it on the first floor? And any specifics about the apartment so we can get kind of a mental picture of it?
Per the transcript from the 2009 hearing, it's a little tiny studio apartment, and I quote, "not any big deal. They have never done a single thing for me. The building is 38 years old, and I think I got everything that came with the building 38 years ago."
When you moved in?
So the question, is there any new utilities in the studio apartment?
Or any improvements, could you describe?
So the question that was asked by one of the commissioners in 2009 was, you said the building is 38 years old. Has anything been done to the apartment? Paint, new carpet, carpet cleaned, the floors wash. The response of the complainant, absolutely zero. Nothing has been done to my apartment.
Was you've been dealing with the same owner of the apartment for 38 years? Or was the apartment, the ownership, what I'm looking for is the apartment was, may have been sold and now there's a new owner?
So the tenant has resided in the building for 16 years. The same landlord has owned the property for 38. And I believe one of the documents that was provided to you was the landlord's statement that says they purchased Greenview in July of 1985.
And just, okay.
So it was 2009 when the complaint was filed, that this is when the hearing was. It was in 2009. The building was purchased in July of 1985 by the current landlord. So the tenant lived there for 16 years, so he or she has lived in this apartment with the same landlord for the 16 years.
At this point, yes, it's still, we're still dealing with the tenant's presentation of the hearing. And for the record, the tenant did provide a copy of the floor plan as an exhibit. So in that situation, I'm imagining that this would be presented as a full exhibit to the chair and would be marked by one of our secretaries as Exhibit A.
Is this the only rental unit in the apartment? There are other unit? Yeah, I'm trying to get a picture of the apartment. Is it a three-story apartment or?
That is a
Yeah,
good question. That was not asked in 2009.
So
So
this
I
is
do not
just
know the
the-
answer.
Just the apartment. There are no other apartments that we can compare what the rents are in other, floors or?
I do not have that information. What is provided to you in this packet
Is what we,
is, what was included was, assuming that this hearing was to happen today, also included is the fair market rent for apartments in Hartford County, Connecticut. This was provided by our Director of Leisure and Social Services a few weeks ago, so it's relatively up to date. And it provides you a list of what various efficiencies, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and 4 bedrooms are going for throughout Hartford, Connecticut. As our chair noted, the tenant is residing in zip code 06107, and I believe you will find that zip code located on the
On page 3.
3 of that document called Hartford County, Connecticut
So these are the
ERAP maximum
rents.
fair market rents.
inefficient? Okay.
So the fair rent for this apartment would be $1,190. And they are going from $1,100 to $1,225. But with an additional $100 if they do not sign the lease by the end of August, it would go to $1,325.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question? Is this a studio apartment, which wouldn't be considered a one-bedroom? So I don't know if the comparison of the rent that we're looking at, a one-bedroom compared to a studio, would be efficient at this.
It's almost,
So an efficiency apartment would be considered a studio apartment, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it's just another word for, an efficiency, so. So the 1,190 would be the cap, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
and she's paying, so she's paying 1,100 now.
So right now, the cap on that would be 1,190. So, going to $1,225 would be over the maximum that we can charge.
Well, not that we could charge,
No, wait.
this would be our, discussion on
Right.
whether we think this is a fair, this may be a new apartment or there may be other factors, because we haven't really heard from the landlord. And, we really need to hear from both sides, I think, before we make it.
Has the tenant made any improvements to the apartment on her own or his own?
No.
Mr. Chair,
And-
can
And
we,
does she say whether the apartment is painted every, 2 or 3 years, or if there is any damage because of water damage, or were things done correctly? Is she complaining about the way the apartment is maintained? That's important to know. And, I mean, if it's not being maintained and there's water coming through and there are bugs and an exterminator hasn't been called or it's been called, but she still has the issue.
The tenant at the time did not complain about paint or an extermination, something that needed to be exterminated.
And-
Her statement was that, and I think I said this before, was that everything from her apartment she believes to be 38 years old. She does have a stove and refrigerator, but there is no dishwasher. And someone from the previous Fair Rent Commission then did ask, has the stove and refrigerator ever been replaced? And her response is no. So upon information and belief, the tenant was testifying that these items within the unit are 38 years old.
And they're working, and she didn't testify that things weren't in working order.
Correct.
So, okay. I have no more questions.
Does anybody have any more questions?
One
Tasha.
question, Mr. Chair. The tenant states that as far as utilities, the heat and the water are included in her rent. Is there an estimated cost of how much hot water costs?
There is not. And for the record, in an actual hearing, you would get all of these documents, hopefully at least 2 weeks in advance. So to the extent there are documents that you do require in order to do any further analysis, that would be provided to you beforehand. No, I can tell you that at the time of this hearing, Ed Zanatti did testify on behalf of the town. Yes, and I believe back in 2009, Ed Zanatti's position was fair rent officer. And I can certainly read his statement if that would be beneficial.
Yes, please, if you can, please. No.
Oh, it appears that the complainant actually called Ed Zanatti as a witness. Oh, and so if I had to speculate as to why, is because prior to anything reaching the Fair Rent Commission, the town does try to see what they can do to try to resolve the situation before it gets in front of you all. So speculating again that he was unsuccessful in his attempt to resolve this. And so the complainant subsequently called Ed as a witness, and his statement was, for the record, I'm Ed Zanatti. This is something we are all learning tonight. And you're right, there was not a specific request for anyone to call a witness or not, but that is something we are learning. So maybe it was not made clear to the tenant that before she sat down, she had the opportunity to call forward a witness if she chose. That might be a typo. It says choice, if she chose to do that. And I think that's all he said about being called as a witness. I don't believe he wanted to be called as a witness in this.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Did the tenant, what was the notice that the tenant was given? Was it only a one-time notice by the landlord?
Yes, and that statement is included in your packet. I believe it's called, oh, I'm sorry, you're asking the notice that the landlord received or that the tenant
That
received?
the tenant received?
So yes, so that is in your packet,
Okay.
and it is called,
Landlord
from the
statement.
program manager, or the property manager. It says, "Dear tenant." It has a little house logo at the top of it.
Yep.
So I'll read it into.
Yes, thank you.
So there's a letter from Greenview Associates, and, I'm sorry, Greenview Apartments. We do value your residency at Greenview. Unfortunately, market conditions and rising costs make it necessary to increase the monthly rent. Your current rent is $1,100. Your rent as of September 1st, 2021 is $1,225. We must have a signed lease in the office by August 30th, 2021. If you do not want to sign a lease and wish to be month-to-month tenant, the rent for your apartment is still $1,225 plus a month-to-month fee of $100. Having a month-to-month tenancy does not lock your new rental amount. Every time the market rent goes up, so does your rental rate. I spoke to my regional manager, who can be reached at regionalmanagermail@email.com. The regional manager is willing to meet with you and view your apartment to see what changes we can do in your apartment. If your appliances are not functioning properly and it is something that the maintenance staff cannot fix, you will get a replacement. Yours sincerely, the property manager. It is not dated, so it doesn't say if it was given, how much time they gave the tenant to make this decision. So do we have that information?
So I took out all dates, I took out all names, and I took out the name of the apartment or the property.
Right.
Just to protect the,
No, I
the
don't.
individuals involved. So that was done on purpose. I can tell you that this was a letter that was provided by the landlord's attorney as an exhibit. So when we get to the direct examination of the landlord, I can certainly circle back to this.
Okay.
I don't know, Chair, if you are concluding the direct examination of our complainant.
Does anybody have any more questions for the complainant?
No more.
I have one quick question, Chair. Did the tenant take up the apartment complex's offer to speak about the rent increase?
My understanding is that she proposed an alternative solution where in lieu of it going up $100 month to month, she would do $25.
Thank you.
So that would be $25 from $1,190, $25 a month.
From $1,100, that is correct. So in lieu of the increase of $1,225, she offered $1,100 plus an additional $25 a month.
$1,190 plus the $25 a month? You said 1,100. She's paying 1,100. Did you know what she's paying now?
Her current rent is $1,100, and she was willing to pay an additional $25 to that $1,100.
For the year, but she doesn't, would this requirement be every month it would go up $25 and?
That was something she was willing to do because I believe that she was working to see if she could find another place to live.
So let me make sure this is straight, because I think there's a confusion. It's not going up every month $25.
No.
It's going up $1,100 to $1,125.
Correct.
That's going to be her rent, but she wants it to be month to month at $1,125.
Correct.
Right, okay. She does not want a rent increase, period, end of story, except for the $25, which would be
Correct.
the month-to-month fee.
Yes.
So
Okay.
$1,125 would be her next month's rent, and then it wouldn't go up another $25 the following.
Right. That would be her.
This is her.
That would be her her rent, but she would be on a month-to-month basis. The tenant does not want a rent increase at all, but she's willing to give an additional $25
All right.
for the month-to-month.
In lieu of them, all right. So by the end of the year, that she would still be paying $1,125.
That is correct,
All right.
on a month-to-month basis. She's not signing a lease.
Actually, not. So that for not signing a lease, okay.
For not signing a lease, they would charge her $1,325. That's what she wants to pay. That's what they want to charge her. If she's going to go month to month, it would be $1,325.
1,325. Okay.
Okay? Do we have any more questions for the tenant? Questions for the tenant? Matthew?
I have no.
Okay. So can we have the landlord down?
Yes, but a question to you as a board is, do you want to allow the attorney for the landlord to be able to cross-examine the tenant? To be able to ask questions of the tenant, given her testimony to you all as a board? Is that something that you all want to allow?
You mean for the tenant?
So the tenant has given her presentation. She has answered all of your questions as a board, and now the landlord's attorney would like to ask the questions of the tenant. Is that something that you want to allow?
Is that going to happen immediately, so we wouldn't have the opportunity to talk to the attorney first? It would be right now.
That's procedurally how things work. So it is up to you to decide if that's something you want to do.
Can we, here's the question that it's going to itch in my head. Do we have the power to say to the attorney, you may cross-examine the tenant, but you need to be within, if we find that you're showboating, we can cut it off?
Yes, and you can certainly ask that all questions go through you. So the landlord's attorney could ask the questions to you, and then you could reiterate them to the tenant. And to the extent that you find the questions to be unnecessary or a matter of grandstanding, you do not have to, yes.
Great.
But we can hear from the representatives of the landlord now, right? And then when we've heard both sides, then we can allow them to, the attorney to question.
So what we're going to hear now is the attorney will now ask questions of the
Through you,
tenant.
Chair, correct.
Through me.
Correct.
So we will approve that, okay? So yes, we will approve that, yes.
Okay. Let's see if that actually happened. If that is something, yes, you as a board decide that you want to allow to happen, yes, the landlord does have an opportunity to cross-examine. That is up to you. That is correct.
And the secretary is just going to take.
That is correct. Our secretaries will not be doing a verbatim transcript. That is correct. We would not put that on
Hey, you
our
got the
secretaries.
best job.
Matt, we want to make sure you
I can read so the commission did allow the attorney to cross-examine, but before the attorney was allowed to do so, the attorney requested to make a statement, and that was approved by the commission. And through you, Chair, may I read it into the record?
please.
Sure. For the record, my name is Attorney, and I represent the property, and the special request I have is the continuance of this hearing at this point due to health reasons on the part of my client or one of my client's district manager, who was recently released from the hospital. District manager has requested that she not do any extraneous activity, and it would be unfair for us to continue without her ability to testify in this matter. So I am asking that this matter be adjourned and that we continue this perhaps a week from now with the pleasure of the committee, commission, and allow her to come back when she is able to do so without the difficulty and the health issues. So I'm requesting a continuance. So that was something that came up.
Did they approve it?
That is a discussion, that's up to you, if you would.
Okay. No, I'm asking if they approved it.
You want me to tell you the answer, or do you guys want to discuss? No, Joe Cassidy was. No.
I don't think I remember this one.
No,
Is that your final answer?
that's my final.
And so the decision of the 2009 Fair Rent Commission was actually to allow all of the witnesses that they had present at that hearing to testify, and then they did in fact continue it to a second hearing. Let's see, so their first hearing on this matter was September 18th, and then their next was October 4th. And so multiple witnesses testified in this matter before the continuance occurred.
So now we would hear from the attorney.
Correct.
Would you like me to read it into the record? The statement?
The attorney's going to cross-examine.
Yes. Let's see. So, it seems like he might have held off on his, reserved his right for cross-examination until the continued hearing and then wanted to present his case. So,
Okay.
Really generous of them.
yeah.
A lot of time in their hands, 2009.
No, you're fine.
Think about what just happened.
I believe it was 2 weeks, right, an additional 2 or 3 weeks. And so then it was an opportunity for the landlord to put on their case. And in doing so, they presented their, I think, affidavit, is that what we called it? Which, through you, Chair, would be admitted as evidence and marked, would be entered into the record. And there's also the attorney's statement on behalf of the landlord.
I can read that into the record. The owner of this property is a limited liability company based out of New York. This property is the only one they own that is located in West Hartford. This property is premier rental property in the town of West Hartford. It is extremely sought after and is in a very desirable location. Despite its ideal location, the rents match other properties that would be considered lesser properties in terms of convenience, size, quality, and amenities offered. There have been upgrades done to the decor, security, and physical aspects of the property, including the pool, patios, and exercise areas. The property is located very close to a pharmacy, several restaurants, and a strip mall. There's a grocery store directly across the street, as well as an automotive servicing facility and a veterinarian, a local church, and schools nearby. Services provided by the landlord include heat and hot water, as well as daily trash and recycling pickup. Residents do not need to walk to the dumpster. Trash pickup comes right to their door. All of these factors make this a desirable property and justify the recent rent increases. So when was the landlord statement entered into? Was it the first day or the
So
second day?
this was the attorney statement on behalf of the landlord, and that
Yeah.
was provided on the first day. I actually don't have a transcript from the second part of the hearing. So this is what he actually stated at the hearing to justify the rent increase.
So my question to the landlord, right off the bat is, you made these improvements when you purchased the property because you were out of code on, you have several code violations. But these were not done, these were done 38 years ago, or within the last 38 years. And that, now you're increasing the rent on the property. So, or do you have a statement of when these, they just say that they had a number of code violations and he said he fixed them. Do we have a times when these were done, or?
And that was asked by the previous commission. And specifically, what they asked the attorney to bring to the next hearing was a list of the improvements that had been done over the years. And the attorney's response at this time was, there was a substantial upgrade in code when the property was sold. The very day the closing occurred, the fire department personnel that handled these issues met us in the lobby of the building and said, now let's get started. In fact, we did exactly that, what they wanted, and then some. And part of the upgrades included new windows throughout the 4 buildings, which include the building where the complainant lives. And so it was requested that a list of upgrades be provided for the continued hearing, at the continued hearing.
So my next question to the landlord would be, you say that these have been done when the building was purchased. So, but what have you done in the last 16 years? I'll give you 5 years.
So, yeah, because this is 1985.
That's my question. Right.
So we did not have a representative on behalf of the landlord present at this hearing. We only had the attorney who represents the limited liability company. And as such, one of the clients, I suppose, would be the property manager on behalf of the landlord, which is the limited liability company. So what we got from the attorney was an opening / closing statement on behalf of their client. So there was no opportunity to cross-examine the landlord at this specific hearing. Presumably, when you have a hearing, you will have a landlord that you can ask questions of, and hopefully they'll have answers. And
The things that I was seeing when I was on the board was that there was a big turnover of apartments in West Hartford, and the new owner had, had a mortgage, was paying probably, on a loan that he took, and the other, he had a lot of tenants who were good tenants, but were not, were paying very little rent in comparison to what his expenses are now. And that seemed to be a standard problem back in the old days. So, I mean, I don't want to say anything about the fire code is something that you don't fool around with. It may change, but it's important that that the town has always maintained very high standards regarding the fire apparatus that the owner has. I'm an officer at Fellowship Housing, and the fire marshal, maybe about 5 years ago, came along and said we wanted a different way of the residents to signal that there's a fire, and we had to do it. There was no questions about it, and we went at it, and there were standard rent increases that we've instituted, but the fire marshal is somebody that you don't fool around with, at least in this town.
Mr. Chair, can we ask of the attorney how many rent increases have occurred since 1985?
How many rent increases have you had since 19?
The testimony of the tenant at the time was yearly.
Yearly increases?
Correct.
Were they substantial? Were they about the same? You know, was it $100? Was it $25?
15 or $20. That's what it is usually. That was the testimony at the time.
Okay.
And she's willing to agree to $25.
Correct.
Okay. Alexis needs to,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, she made,
Yeah, we were allowed, according to Robert's rules, to suspend the meeting. I mean, that's to, not to suspend, what's the word? Allow people to go to the bathrooms and things like that.
So I think like the next step from this would be, the next step would really to go to the next meeting. Thank you, Alexis. I think the next step through this would be the next meeting that we would have, because they asked for the continuance. So we would go on to the next meeting, because we've read everybody's statements in. I think that, I don't know if there's a next step that we need to, I mean, we can come up with what we would think what would be fair, and then put a judgment down. Is that correct?
It's up to you.
So I'm thinking we've done a direct, we've done a cross, we've done a direct.
This is a public meeting pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act. All discussions must occur in public. There is no basis for an executive session behind closed doors, but there is no obligation for you to come to a decision this evening.
So I move that we do not come to a decision this evening. And I think this is, you know what, this was a great learning experience. I first want to thank Cynthia for really putting this whole thing together. Thank you so much. You've been really a very helpful, very helpful. Thank God we have a lawyer here.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Just curious about any of our.
I believe, when you all introduced yourself, I don't think anybody stated that they were in fact a landlord, to the best of my recollection.
That's very interesting because there were a lot of
I could be mistaken, but I don't recall anyone.
It didn't seem.
Right,
On my own
right.
time, my own.
That is correct.
And I,
I did not see any record of where the West Hartford Fair Rent Commission or the town of West Hartford had an appeal due to a decision that they had rendered in a case.
and really, you get that big check at the end of the meeting, right?
Just a couple of questions. So would you, as a commission, allow the tenant, assuming we had a landlord present, allow the tenant to cross-examine the landlord?
That's where I was going with.
Yeah, I don't, the tenant, of course.
Well, we've allowed.
And the testimony of witnesses is,
That would,
closing statements. Correct. Again, which leads to the question, do you want to allow a time frame for?
yeah, I would.
Okay, so our secretary would be keeping track of the time. And maybe that's something you want to include in your bylaws as to how much time you want to allow for closing statements.
The only problem I see with.
Yes,
There's this one.
yes,
There's a room downstairs on the.
yes, yes, there is.
And there's a.
Right,
Which is like the palace.
Next
right,
place.
right.
I think that we can move on, so we've seen the tenant, we've learned about the landlord and the lawyer, what we will allow between statements, and we do need to talk about the bylaws and putting in the timing of what the closing statements would be. We will have that. So what I would recommend is we need to have the subcommittee for the bylaws to meet within, I would say, the next month. And I'll shoot Joe Cassidy an email about that.
Yeah, you appointed
Right. Joe's not here today, and I don't, and the other, and who was the other person?
I'm here.
All right, so, Tasha and Stu, you guys, I'll get with Joe and say, you know, and talk about this,
I kind of think that bylaws are okay. I mean, we used them in the past, and Cynthia, you were going to just check the statutory references and update them, right?
I was going to just provide that to the subcommittee to
Right.
make
So,
any changes that they deem
I
fit.
don't really have any,
we do need to add time for statements, closing statements to the bylaws, so we have that in place. So if we want to give them 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the number is, but that's not in the bylaws, I think, correct, currently?
Correct. And another, I guess, matter that you would want to take up is how you come to a decision, and who is writing the final decision, and who is signing the final decision. Because all documents, evidence, recordings, transcripts will be provided to the Office of Corporation Counsel in the event that there is an appeal.
yeah. And minutes have to be submitted within 48 hours to the town clerk, right?
Mr. Secretary?
7 days.
Correct.
What?
7 days.
7 days.
Yep, even for hearings,
Correct.
7 days
Yeah.
even for hearings.
As I said, I was on the personnel board for in a 5-year period. I think I was chair twice, and I always liked doing it. But I'll tell you, you really sit and think about this, and what happened was that that the town would appeal to the Board of Arbitration, and the union then would appeal to the Board of, so I think they sort of came up with an agreement that to bypass the personnel board. But it
So-
was, we were called, are we on TV?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
So I have a recommendation. I would like to set up a Zoom call within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll come up with a date. I'll send it out to Stu, Tasha, and Joe Cassidy to review the bylaws, okay? If we want to add anything, at that meeting, we will add them to the bylaws. And then at our next full meeting, we will move to adopt them to go forward.
Yes, that meeting, your Zoom meeting is actually going to have to be a WebEx meeting. It's a subcommittee meeting of a public agency, so that is also subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So we would need our secretary to notice that meeting, put together the agenda, and minutes would have to be taken at that subcommittee meeting.
So we have 24 hours before we have to notify somebody?
Mr. Chair,
20
Secretary?
Before the meeting, we have to,
We have to notify, with the agenda, correct?
Correct.
We have to have the agenda in the secretary, the town secretary's office, I think 48 hours.
It's statutorily 24, but the town of West Hartford does prefer 48 hours because we do like to post it online.
Yep.
So you are correct, Mr. Secretary.
48
Thank you.
So I will send out an email tomorrow or tonight, and asking for when you're availability, and we will put an agenda together, and we will have it, we'll send it to Cynthia, and we'll make sure she's for a WebEx, not a Zoom meeting, right?
Correct.
And we will, and that will be to just review the bylaws, make sure if there's anything we want to add, put them in there, get them typed up, and then we will have a meeting within the next, I think we want to do it the last Thursday of the month. So we'll do the last Thursday of June, and we will meet at that day to approve or not approve the bylaws. Is that okay?
Mr. Chair, are we going to discuss at the subcommission meeting how we're going to come to a decision, who's writing the decision and who's signing it? Or are we going to leave that for an entire commission meeting?
I think, in my opinion, we should do that as a whole membership, not for the, you know.
Mr. Chair, would you like to hear the final decision of the Fair Rent Commission from 2009?
I would love to hear the final decision.
In the case involving a complaint brought by tenant against his landlord, the Fair Rent Commission did not find sufficient cause to order an adjustment to the complainant's current rent. However, the Fair Rent Commission was able to establish with the complainant's landlord an agreement to accept rent through October 31st at the same monthly rate as he has been paying during his previous lease period, and to allow him, without penalty, to terminate his current lease prior to its stated completion date, provided he offer a minimum of 60 days written notice prior to such early termination. For the record, that was written by the secretary at that time.
So the rent,
So the complainant wanted to obviously leave where they were residing. So the parties came to an agreement with the assistance of the Fair Rent Commission where they were accepting the same amount of rent as, I think it was $1,100. They were accepting the same $1,100. And then the tenant was allowed to terminate his lease early without penalty.
without penalty.
Correct.
So is it,
Yeah.
But they still wanted to.
Yeah.
Find a new place to sign it. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. Cynthia, thank you so much for
Thank
helping
you.
put this together.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming here. I know it's, we're trying to get everybody together, but it really was, for me, it was a learning opportunity for number one, being the chair for this, and I appreciate everybody's patience, and I want to thank everybody for being here. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, one quick FYI. So if we are doing anything on the 24th, I know for a fact I will be out of town on vacation.
So will I, so we will come up with a date. Yeah, when I was doing the math in my head, so I will, we'll come up with the dates. I'll send out an email tomorrow for 2 dates, one for the subcommittee meeting and for the next Fair Rent Commission meeting, okay? And I think we could do both online for,
If you are meeting after June 30th, I believe the governor's executive orders expire.
Is it something in our subcommission meeting?
That is something I can look into, and I will get back to you tomorrow.
We could probably see. A written happening.
any other questions? Or can I get a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.